Hello again. In today's video, I would like to talk about a topic which is absolutely critical for foreign language learning, and that is the difference between proficiency and knowledge. What is the difference between proficiency and knowledge, and how do we keep these two things straight? If you can understand this one single concept, you will have such a huge advantage when it comes to learning a foreign language. You will speed past all of your peers who do not understand this critical concept. So, this is perhaps the most critical thing. Again, I cannot stress enough. I'm stressing it a lot, you can tell, but I can't even stress it enough. The difference between proficiency and knowledge. So, let's start with an example. And when we talk about foreign language learning, it's often useful to use an analogy of sports or weightlifting. But let's use sports. So you may not play the sports that I talk about in these videos, but just bear with me and just use your imagination. I'm sure even if you haven't played the sport yourself, the exact details are not so important. So let's talk about tennis, okay? Now, imagine you're trying to play tennis and you want to get good at it, okay? So the first thing that you might want to learn, I don't know. I don't play tennis. I don't even know why I'm using it as an example, but we'll just stick with tennis. So the first thing you might want to learn is how to serve the ball, right? How to serve the ball. And let's say that, you know, when you serve tennis, you throw the ball up, right? And then you strike it with the other hand. You throw the ball up and you strike it with the other hand. And let's say you want to serve the perfect serve. Well, to serve the perfect serve, there is an exact distance the ball should go up in the air, and there is an exact angle with which you should strike the ball with your racket, and there is an exact form you should use when you strike your ball, like how your arm should move, and so on and so forth. In other words, there's a lot of details to things that you need to get right if you want to serve the ball perfectly, get it over the net, and get that perfect ace serve that your opponent can't return, right? So if you wanted to know all these things, what angle do I need to strike this ball? At what speed must my arm be moving? At what angle must the ball be struck? Where should I aim the ball? Where should I look? What should I be thinking about? How should my body move? Okay, there's many different things. Maybe one thing that you could do is you could hire the world's best tennis coach, and you could ask them to tell you, and you would maybe ask them to give you some notes. Maybe this person could write it down for you. The world's best serve. Your arm should be going at this angle, and they would tell you the exact degree, 46-degree angle. It needs to be going at this speed, so many meters per second. You need to be aiming here. You need to be looking at this place on the court, and so on and so forth. Now, they could tell you all of the information that goes into making the perfect serve. And after they tell you this, will you be able to serve the perfect serve? Knowing everything there is to know about how to serve the perfect serve, all of the information that goes on, all of the things that there is to know. Let's say this is an imaginary scenario where this tennis coach is like omniscient. He knows literally everything. He can tell you every tiny detail about how every molecule in your body must be moving to serve the perfect serve. If he told you all that information, would you be able to serve the perfect serve? Now, I'll tell you what my intuition says. My intuition says after you had all this information, perhaps you would serve slightly better than someone who had never been exposed to that information. Let's say you're both beginners in tennis. So, two people with no experience in tennis, one of them gets all of this knowledge, and the other one doesn't. Now, if you got this knowledge, maybe you could serve a little bit better than the person who has had no knowledge, but maybe not at all. Maybe it wouldn't help you at all. And why is that? Well, you may have intuited it already, but it's because knowing is not enough. I mean, we've probably all had this experience where we had a coach or a teacher who was trying to help us, and they were telling us everything we needed to know, but we still couldn't do it exactly as they said. And that is because even if you know how to do something, you still have to practice it. In effect, knowing everything there is to know about tennis, you would still probably have to practice serving it 1,000,000 times before you could actually do it properly, let alone perfect, right? I don't know if it's 1,000,000, maybe it's less than 1,000,000. Many times, right? That's how many times you would have to serve a tennis ball to do it properly. So the point is that even if you know something, it has no effect on your proficiency. Your proficiency is what determines your ability to do the thing. How proficient are you at tennis? That's what decides how good you are at tennis, not all this knowledge that you might have, right? And language learning is the same thing. Language learning is the same thing. The amount of knowledge you have about this language, about its inner workings, about all of the grammar rules, you might know many things, you might know many words, but none of that matters. Well, it might matter to some extent. Just like I said, maybe it would increase your ability to serve maybe a bit or to some extent if you had some knowledge about how to serve, but it won't compete at all with the practice of actually doing it, right? Now, let's take a look at some examples from language. We'll set down a child of, I don't know, a child of 4 to 10 years old. They're probably pretty good at speaking their native language. I know some people like to say, oh, when I speak my foreign language, I speak like a 4-year-old. But that's actually probably doing 4-year-olds a disservice because 4-year-olds are pretty good at speaking. Children can speak their native languages pretty fluently, okay? But if you asked a 7 or an 8-year-old, do you know what a noun is and a verb is? Can you identify the adverb in this sentence? What's the difference between an adverb and an adjective? What's a conjugation? And how do you conjugate this verb? Now, if you ask them, ask them about their knowledge of the language, you'd find they know virtually nothing. They would know virtually nothing. I know when I was 8-year-old, I did not know what a noun and a verb was. I had never heard the word conjugation in my life. I could not tell you what inflection was. I was not even super comfortable with terms like pronoun or personal pronoun and things like this, let alone subject, object, verb. I did not know any of these words. However, I could still speak just fine. I could speak fluently. I could speak even intelligently as a child, somewhat as intelligent as a child could be. So, a child doesn't have any knowledge about their language, but they sure have a lot of proficiency, don't they? On the other hand, I have met many linguistics professors who have studied certain languages for decades. I had a professor at the University of Washington. She had studied the Korean language for a couple decades. Could she speak Korean? No. She knew everything there was to know about Korean. She could tell you all the intricacies of the phonology of the language and the grammar rules and the history, and she knew many, many words in Korean. But she couldn't speak Korean. She couldn't understand Korean when she heard it, at least not very well. Why is that? She had a lot of knowledge, but a very low level of proficiency. Versus the child that we saw, very high level of proficiency, very low level of knowledge. So when you go to learn a foreign language, what is it that you're trying to do? Are you trying to become a linguistics professor who can tell you about all the intricacies of the language? Oh, here's all the rules, here's all the grammar, and I can tell you everything there is to know about this language. Or are you trying to get good at the language so that you can use it in your communication, so that you can listen to things and understand it, whether it's other people you're speaking with, or things on YouTube or Netflix, people you're talking with in your community, or you want to go travel and talk to people, maybe read books in this language? That's what you want, right? I mean, some people certainly want to be linguistics professors and their goals are different. But for the average person, I believe that you want a high level of proficiency in the language. You don't need a high level of knowledge. The thing is, when people study a foreign language, they typically only study trying to increase their level of knowledge about a language. And it's really clear to see, because often when people have some kind of deficiency in their language, something they're not good at, right? Oh, I always mess up the genders in German. Oh, I mess up the conjugations in French, or whatever it is. The first thing people usually go to do is increase their knowledge about the language, or review their knowledge, because they probably learned it at some point. You probably did learn about what the genders are for all those words that you studied and how to conjugate all these verbs, but you've forgotten. And so you think that in order to get better, to fix this thing you're not very good at, you need to go and review that knowledge. But what you really need to do is increase your proficiency. No amount of knowledge will substitute proficiency. So no matter how much knowledge you accumulate, it will not make you necessarily any better at speaking or understanding or reading whatever your goals are in the foreign language. They won't make you any better. The only way to get more proficient is to practice the skill that you're trying to get good at. If you want to be good at speaking the language, you need to speak it more. If you want to increase your comprehension, you need to listen more. And by practicing these skills, you're practicing your proficiency. And by doing it in an intelligent way, if you study in an intelligent way using good resources and good study methods, then you can increase your proficiency. And we can see that there are some foreign language learners who have not necessarily a high level of knowledge about a language. If you say, oh, tell me what the subjunctive is of that verb, they say, I don't know. But when they speak, they can speak confidently. And I think that's what we're all going for. And also, we should realize these two things aren't mutually exclusive. You can have a high level of knowledge and a high level of proficiency. The critical thing is to remember, if we want to get good at a foreign language, we need to not focus on just accumulating knowledge, where we learn rules or look at things and try to remember facts, but we need to practice. Just like with tennis. Think about it. How many books can you read about tennis before you become a professional tennis player? Well, there's no amount of books that'll make you into a professional tennis player. You have to practice. And then, of course, knowledge can sometimes help you become a better tennis player, or at least give you the opportunity to become a better tennis player. But if you don't put it into practice, it won't mean anything, will it? And it's the same with foreign languages. So there you have it. That's the difference between knowledge and proficiency. And if you can remember this on your foreign language journey, I'm sure your studies will go super duper. All right. Thanks for watching. See you soon in another video.